Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Album Homework Assignment. Today, our two participants, none other than loyal viewer Armando Venditti and Sea of Tranquility writer Eric Porter, my fellow New Yorker, and we got Canada represented as well. We got a lot of Canadians appearing on the show, but welcome, guys. How are you? Thanks for joining.
Good to be here. Good to be here. Canada does rock, by the way, just so you know.
I'm well aware of that. Yep. I'm a fan. I got a lot of Canadians that I like from up there. So it's I'm a fan of Canada. I'm a fan of Canada. You guys make pretty good beer too. So there's something for that as well. So both of these gentlemen have given each other their homework assignments. They have had some time to spend with their albums. So they're each going to go. Who wants to go first? Does it matter? Armando, I'll let you go first today. So you want to let us know what Eric assigned you?
Okay.
And
thank you so much.
You're welcome so much.
Well, just so before we begin officially, just so that there's no confusion or no mistaking, just wanted to point this out to people. You can see this.
Oh.
All right.
Well, I paid tribute to Jamie.
There are no Albertos in this house. Whatsoever, pardon my language. If there are, they need to get their name on the bloody mortgage because it's just Bob and I here. Okay. And just as a thank you to Bob, I just want to give a shout out to Bob for getting me ready in time for the show, because without him, this would not be possible. So
there you go. Thanks to Bob. And just so everybody knows, if you don't know what both Eric and Alberto are talking about, Armando, for whatever reason, and I don't know, this started like 2-3 weeks ago in getting ready and announcing this show. For some reason, I called Armando Alberto, and I don't know why. They don't really sound alike. They're both Italian names. I've been listening to a lot of Italian prog lately, and there are a lot of musicians named Alberto, and so I don't know what it is. I've apologized profusely to Armando, but yeah. But obviously, Pete puts his foot in mouth, and this will be one of those never gets old jokes, I think, now between us. So yeah, so no Alberto today, just Armando. So back to Armando.
Okay. All right. Well, Eric and I were talking, and the band he gave me was Happy the Man. Okay. And I've heard the name. You've mentioned the name on the show quite a few times. And I've looked up a couple of the first album from '77. But I'm going to give, just for the viewers who don't know anything about them, I'm going to give a bit of a background. They're from Harrisonburg, Virginia. They formed, depending on which website you go to, they were formed either in '72 or '73. They were active from '73 to '79, and they took a hiatus. And they've been active from 2000 to present. But as you said, their last album was in 2004, Awaken the Muse. So depending, it's a John Sykes situation.
Yeah, yeah. They say they're still active, but active is kind of stretching it because active was like a decade ago, right? Yeah,
sure. Yeah. Exactly. It's a John Sykes situation. Hey, Butch, how's it going? So anyways, the album he gave me was Crafty Hands, their second album, released on Arista Records in 1978, produced by Ken Scott, who we all know, produced Supertramp, Crime of the Century, worked in my favorite Supertramp album, by the way. Worked on, I believe he worked on Crisis Where Crisis. He also produced David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust, Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust. Their influences, sorry, just get back to the influence. The influences they cited were Gentle Giant, Yes, and Genesis. So for the Crafty Hands album, the personnel was Stan Whitaker, sorry, half a coffee, I'm screwed up right now. But Stan Whitaker on 6 and 12 string guitars and vocals, Frank Wyatt on piano, harpsichord, saxes, and flutes. Kit Watkins, piano, harpsichord, moog, fake strings, clavinet, Hammond B organ, recorder. Rick Kennel on bass and Ron Riddle on drums. Okay, now they gave me the album, Crafty Hands to listen to, and it's not a long album. It's like 41 minutes and 38 seconds or something like that. Only 8 songs. Only 8 songs. And they're listed as a progressive rock group from the 70s, right? Okay. I broke down the songs, okay? In terms of the first, it starts off with Service with a Smile, and that's Eric's favorite track on the album.
Mine too.
Yours too. Okay. Well, the track starts off with a simple guitar chord sequence, very slow, very nice, breezy kind of situation. And then it goes into like a lot of, it goes into sweeping keyboard passages kind of thing. It's very like tranquil sort of, you know, kind of things. It does have tight twin guitar lines, as I call it. It's a very atmospheric track. It's slow. It's not very long. It's 2 minutes and 44 seconds. It's a very futuristic feel. It's almost like it could be like the theme to a show like Battlestar Galactica or Buck Rogers or something like that, you know. And then once you get into it, like when you get into it, finally, it's like okay, and then it just stops, and you're like, okay, you know. And then it's like, and then it goes into track 2, Morning Sun, which is my favorite track on the album. Okay, it's keyboard. Okay, the key word for this album is keyboards. Keyboards, and more effing keyboards. Okay, just not that it's a bad thing. Okay, it starts off again with a nice keyboard passage. It almost has like a lullaby type of quality to it. Very sort of, you know, kind of lulls you into like almost like a sleep kind of a situation. Well, for me anyway, you know.
Dreamy. That's what I usually call that. Yeah,
Yeah.
dreamy.
Dreamy is a good way to put it. Yeah, very tranquil. Has a nice acoustic guitar passage mixed with synthesizers. Like it's just very pleasant. And to me, it's almost like, I don't know if you've ever been in a dream state where you're like half asleep and half awake. You're just in that sort of zone in between. That's how I feel when I hear this. Like it's very, it kind of lulls you kind of thing, right? So it's fine. The third track, Idiot Is, the second longest track on the album at 7:05, has very Genesis style synths. It goes into different time signatures and different time signatures, yeah, and keyboard passages, very textured guitars mixed with synthesizers. There's a slight guitar solo at the end, which is quite nice. You know, I like it.
Stan's a great player. He really is.
Yeah. They're you know, they worked really. Let me start again. They you know, like they're very tight in terms of a unit. So that's what I like. The fourth track, Steaming Pipes. I listened to this again yesterday. I did a final run through yesterday morning when you messaged me and said, "Oh, TikTok, Armando." Like, you know, everyone's a critic, right? So from what I gathered, I listened to it again, and you know, I heard like, you know, short stabs of sax at the start. They use castanets on the track. Very minimal. It goes into different time changes, and I heard a possible use of guitar synth in it. Maybe they did like a, you know, studio like kind of what you call it, like a studio trick, you know, like during the mixing. I'm not quite sure. There, let me see here. It does a repeat of the same passage near from the middle of the track to the end. It just repeats the same passage over, but it keeps, every time it repeats, it adds a different layer, like a different instrument to it, guitar or another synth or a sax. And, you know, and then it gets to like a frenzy almost for them, whatever frenzy is for them. It, you know, this is not a Venom album, let's say, right? Not at all. Okay, so but it repeats the same passage, and then it gets to a point, and it just sort of stops, and then for the last minute and 30 seconds, it just repeats the same passage over and over again onto the fade out, but it's very minimal, just keyboards and drums, and although they do, you know, drums are used on the album, they're not overly used. It's not like a bombastic in any way. Do you know what I mean? So track 5, Wind Up Doll, Day Wind. What to say about this track? Okay. Do you remember when you said that, you know, there was a couple of times when you were at the gym and you were listening to Rainbow Rising and you had Stargazer, and it brought up, you know, an emotion out of you, like it just made you feel a certain way.
It brought me to tears. It brought me
It brought
to
you
tears.
to tears.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you unequivocally that this was not the case with the vocals on this track. I'm sorry, like it hurt. I mean, the music, they are fantastic musicians, but when the vocals came in, it was like, oh shit. It just stopped. Like I'll tell you what I have here, okay? You have swirling keyboards mixed with cymbal flourishes. It has an ominous keyboard passage that comes in, and they use a timpani effect, like either effect or actual timpani. But when the vocals come in, it's like, oh, like it was just no. There are certain artists that just, in my opinion, should not sing. I'm sorry, it's just it doesn't work. As I put here, weak vocals, quirky passages, like different time signatures. Again, a very Genesis style type of feel in terms of the track. I noticed they use organ on this track, and it did have a good sax solo. I will give it that. But the vocals, I mean, it shocked me. You know what I mean? Like the way it was. But I got moving notes over here. Moving on. Track 6, which is Open Book. This is also my favorite track, my second favorite track, I could say. Again, a lot of keyboards. They use flutes, minstrel guitars, almost like almost have like medieval passages that come in, right? Almost like a Jethro Tull feel, very much so, which was nice. And they use mandolin, and they use twin synth and guitar lines, and a lot of keyboard flourishes, right? Track 7 is I Forgot to Push It. It's a faster tempo, frenetic guitar lines, twin harmony guitars, guitar runs, short stabs of sax, and use of hand claps, like just to, I guess, a bit of a percussion situation going on there. It's fine. The the last song, track 8, is The Moon I Sing. And again, it's almost like at the start of the album, it's almost like, how can I put this? It's almost like the start of a journey, right? Like kind of a situation like, the day starts and you're going on, but by track 8, The Moon I Sing, it's almost like the end of the day, right? So again, you've got really nice keyboard passages. I put here end of the day kind of vibe, minimal drumming, and again, Genesis type of keyboards. Like you could almost think like Tony Banks is on this album at some point, playing. And at the end of the track, you can hear where it's kind of like it goes up a key, like the keyboards when it's on the fade out. So it's almost like a spaceship taking off, right? Going up into the stratosphere, whatever. And yeah, that's basically it. Those are the notes I have, and it's a good album. It's very good, But yeah, those are my notes, and I'm sticking to it. So that's what I put.
So now the question is, do you buy it? Do you just stream it occasionally, or do you forget it?
Stream. I did attempt to buy it, and I couldn't get in time because I wanted a prop, because props are big on the show, right?
They are.
But I did try to buy it, and you can edit this out if you want. But I basically got duped by a local record store in the city. I called them twice, and they were like, oh, we have it, Happy the Man, Progressive. They knew all about the group. I get there, oh, we don't have it in stock now, but if you want some, maybe you won't like try and get me to buy something else. So it's like, the bait and switch, right?
Yeah.
And that pissed me off because it's like, I've spent over $500 in that store this year alone, right? Like when you did the show on Jean-Luc Ponty, right? The ranking, I walked out of there with the entire Atlantic Records catalog.
Nice.
Under my arm, including one of the Columbia records. I forget the name of the album, his first Columbia record release. Bob walked out of there like, carrying this thing because I couldn't carry it. I bought like 9 albums, and I also bought Frank Zappa's Joe's Garage. So I mean, I buy a lot of vinyl and CDs and stuff. So I mean, yeah, in all honesty, I would stream it. I like it, but to buy it, I wouldn't do it. I couldn't.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think just to drop my 2 cents in, I think Happy the Man's first 2 albums are.
Sorry?
I think Happy the Man's first 2 albums are, for most people considered US prog classics, because quite frankly, from that time period, there really wasn't a lot of US prog bands, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I always thought that band was probably better at just having instrumentals. I mean, I don't mind the vocals, but they're a great instrumental band. That's kind of was their thing. They're a little kind of blending of kind of like Canterbury prog and jazz fusion and straight up prog. They're a pretty interesting, quirky band and amazingly talented, just like you stated. I mean, there are some serious players in that band. Serious players.
For sure. And I think Stan improved. I mean, if you listen to The Muse Awakens, I think his voice is better. And they have obviously, I think their whole intent was an instrumental band, and maybe because I think the first album has 2 vocals, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think they were getting radio play either way, but maybe somebody was pushing them to sing. So I don't, Stan does a lot of acoustic shows now. I just think, his voice has improved. And I agree with you. That's probably I love the record. And the thing that drew me to Happy the Man, honestly, I'm a guitar player and they are a keyboard heavy band, but there's some bands you just make that connection with right away. But I would agree with you. I mean, I would, and that song probably holds up as an instrumental.
Yeah.
It probably didn't need the vocals, but maybe somebody at the label was pushing them.
Well, they were signed to a major label, so I'm sure someone was pushing for that.
They were signed to Arista Records. I mean, Clive Davis's label.
Yeah.
But I mean, like Eric and I were talking about this. We've had a couple of chats to prepare for this. And let's be honest, we've had a couple of weeks to prepare for this, whereas other people like, George Lemay messaged me. He's like, I've only got to, he's like, they've, paired me up with Rand and I've got, this album to listen to. And he goes, you have 2 weeks to go. And it's like, yeah, and I'm doing the whatever, but you do the best you can. But in terms of the roster on Arista, for example, like in terms of promotion, like I have Arista was not a label known for progressive rock. I have a bit of a list here. You had, who was signed to Arista in the 70s? The Fifth Dimension, Bay City Rollers, Barry Manilow, there we go.
Way different.
Alan Parsons Project.
Well, that's
right?
as close as you're going to get, probably.
That's exactly it. Dionne Warwick and Melissa Manchester. Like, I love me some Midnight Blue as well. Like, believe me.
Right.
But they were not. They were on the label that I don't believe knew how to market them. Right.
It's
tough band to market too.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, first of all, look where they come from. All right. They're from the DC, Virginia, DC area, not necessarily a hotbed for, forget progressive rock music in general. Right. And then you've got a label that probably had no clue what to do with Happy the Man. And they got it's a weird name, right? It's kind of an obscure name. So yeah, it was almost like they were doomed to fail. You know what's really similar? If you could put some parallels to like Ekelin in the early 90s. So here you got this obscure Pennsylvania prog band who gets signed to Epic Record, Sony.
Yeah, there was Sony Epic through Sony, yeah.
Yeah, and the label had no clue whatsoever to do with them. And before you know it, the album comes out, and like 2 weeks later, they're dropped. So what a disaster. An amazing album. As are the two Happy the Man albums. But yeah, that's unfortunate when you got a label who really doesn't have a clue what to do with you. And maybe in the label's defense, by the time those Happy the Man albums have come out, kind of the progressive rock heyday is kind of already passed a little bit, like the glory years of Yes and ELP and Genesis and whatnot, a year or two or three behind already. Yep. So
I think it's two things. I think that and I'll shut up in a minute, I promise. I think I think you're right. By 77, you had ELP, Yes, Genesis, Gentle Giant, well ensconced in their careers. You know what I mean? Like George said on another episode, they could have put on an album of farts and any one of those bands I just mentioned, and they would have been bought. Can we say Love Beach? You know what I mean? Like anyone, they would have bought anything. You know what I mean? But I think it was big. They sounded maybe a little too generic to the masses.
They're mostly instrumental, and
yeah.
Again, I think what you just said makes a lot of sense. So those big bands, they're already big. All right. They're maybe, not selling as many records as they did a couple of years prior, but I think the issue is trying to break a new band in that mold next to impossible. Because really, there are no new bands from like 75 to the end of the decade. There are no new prog bands that are breaking big in those years. It just didn't happen. You had the old guard who still were selling records, Yes, King Crimson, Genesis, ELP, Rush, that's it. They're still selling records.
Forget Rush. Sorry.
Yeah, you especially. Come on, man.
My God. I actually, never mind. Sorry. Forgive me. I mean, no, but it's true. And like I said this on another chat a few weeks ago, and I said this to Eric a couple of nights ago. For me, there's three things in terms of how a band, like for a band to succeed. One, it's the songs. Okay, you have to have the songs. If they're not good, even from the writing stage, if it's not what you feel that's the best you can put out there, then you're already gone. Two, it's the record company, promotion and support of the band.
Yeah.
All right. And three, it's the ability of the artist to bring out to let me start again. It's the third is the band's ability to carry it across to the audience, to get the music across to the audience. If any of those three factors falter, you're dead.
It's hard. Yeah.
You're dead. You're dead in the water.
Yep.
And you could have the best of intentions to get stuff out there, but I mean, you know, that's my unprofessional opinion in terms of what, you know, in terms of how to get your music out there and how to get it successful.
Yeah. And let's face it, there's no hit single on Crafty Hands.
Yep.
And 1977, that's
not track 5. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm sorry, guys. Listen, in all honesty, like that song. I mean, again, you can edit this out, but you know, it hurt. It actually freaking hurt. I'm telling you something. I was actually driving home one night in my wheelchair, crossing the street in Toronto, and I got hit by a car crossing the street. The impact of the car hitting me was not as painful as those vocals. I'm sorry. Like,
wow.
I'm sorry. And I mean, I remember the impact of the car hitting me, and it was just like, yeah. Okay, moving on. You know, like, you know, I couldn't do it. I couldn't.
Wow. Well, that's we all hear things differently, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
So we got a streamer on this one. All right. So cool. So, all right. So now we're going to move on to Eric and his assignment.
Well, this is kind of funny because obviously we're show number 3 and I was assigned the Tea Party like you were on the previous show for Martin. Different album. So
those guys from Canada love their Tea Party, man. Let me tell you.
I hear you. So I was assigned Transmission. So that was one of the things I was going to say to you, Pete, with Martin. Maybe you should even have a show with him called Northern Exposure, and they can give us all these Canadian bands that never made it in the US that we haven't heard about. I mean, I'm a big Max Webster, Kim Mitchell fan, and it's still, I can't believe
it would be a 2-episode show.
They never made a dent in this country, right? So same conversation. We were talking, I think it was the second band you mentioned, Armando, and I'm like, I've heard the name, have never heard a note of their music. So we kind of went with that. Obviously, they're huge in Canada. This album was double platinum, I believe, in Canada. Went gold in Australia. Had a number of singles. I think most of the singles charted, at the very least, on the rock chart, if not on the regular charts in Canada. My approach to this was I wanted to just sit down with this album and found it on YouTube. I didn't want to read about the band. I didn't want to know anything, just go in and listen to it. Gave it 2 listens back to back and wrote down my first impressions. And what I came away with, number 1, is Jeff Martin's awesome. Great singer, powerful singer. When you can come across on a studio album with that kind of, studio albums, I love seeing bands live. But when you can really put across that emotion on a studio album, that's saying something. Because a lot of the music's good, the bands are good, and then you always get something from the live show. Right away, this guy hit me as, I like him. And I could see this guy being, before I went out and watched some live clips, I'm thinking this guy's probably a showman. He's probably great on stage. But I thought he was just passionate, and that came across in his vocals. The record is really heavy on Middle Eastern motifs, mostly from the keyboards, and it really runs through the entire album. So that's a heavy influence on this band, obviously, at least on this record. It's still, I've gone out and listened to a couple clips, but this album I've played over the last 2 weeks. And that really came across. And then, and I'm sure this is on purpose, and I'm like you, Pete, I don't really know anything about industrial. This is apparently their industrial electronica period or album. So there's a lot of process sounds on this where it sounds overproduced at times, but I think that's the intent of the music based on what they're trying to do. So those were kind of my 3 takeaways on first listen. And then based on that, I just would listen over and over. I like to do different things. I'm listening while I'm working, so that's more of a passive listening. I'd bring it in the car with me. And then I'd sit down. What I really liked about this album was when I listened on headphones.
It is a headphones album.
It's really put together well with all the noises, sound effects. It's a really cool album to listen to on headphones. They did a really good job on that. What I like about the band, basically, this album is very song oriented. I don't think there's anything that hits the 6-minute mark. There's a couple 5-minute tracks. So very song oriented band. It's very heavy. It rocks. Temptation is the first song, and it kind of, smacks you right in the face. It's really a rocking song. It's the same thing. It's got this little, it sounds like a 12-string guitar, but I think it's a traditional, maybe a lute or something like that is the intro. And right away, you're getting that Middle Eastern motif before the song kicks in. But it's a heavy song. This is another song similar to Service with a Smile, 2 minutes and something. And it just, right out of the gate, they're rocking. And it pretty much,
in the gut.
It does. And it pretty much goes through. The first 6 tracks are pretty heavy, except for Psychopomp gets a little atmospheric, but they don't really let up until you get into the midpoint of the album. But Temptation is one of the songs. I think that was the first single from the album, but an obvious single. I mean, it's great. It's not a single that you'd say, oh, they made that. It's a killer track. I loved it. The songs that really hit me the most, Psychopomp is more of a orchestral. These guys, it's a little dark. There's some dark feel, and probably that Middle Eastern type of stuff really brings that across. But again, I don't know a lot about industrial music or bands. There were a couple songs on this album that remind me of Porcupine Tree. And Psychopomp was one of them. And I'm not, at this time, I think Porcupine Tree was like the Signify was like 96. This was 97. So I don't know if there was any back and forth, but there's a couple songs that I get a real Porcupine Tree from. So Psychopomp is one. My favorite song on the album, Emerald, opens with acoustic guitar, some atmospheric keys, and then they put a mellotron over the acoustic guitar in the verse. And that's pure Steven Wilson. And again, not to say they got that from Steven Wilson, but to me, I could hear Porcupine Tree doing that song. And it's a very emotional song. It builds throughout the song. Great tune. That's another one. And probably the one that didn't catch me right away, but now is pretty close to being a favorite, is Gyroscope. The cadence, the phrasing he uses in that song, the vocal's fantastic. I love the chorus. They have big choruses, very catchy choruses. And again, I don't know that I would go the prog route with these guys, but they definitely have, that experimental approach. Everything's not pop or rock. There's definitely an experimental bent to this band.
Yeah, I thought the same thing when I had mine. Yeah.
So that's kind of my takeaway on them. A lot of keyboards. On this album in particular, the guitars, bass, and drums are really heavy and kind of carry the songs, and the keyboards kind of put a lot of stuff over the top that gives the songs maybe a little different change. And again, that's the instrument I think that really gives the Middle Eastern motifs in these songs is the keyboards. And there's a song, this is kind of funny because Armando and I had a back and forth on this one. I'm listening to this song, Babylon, and it's kind of punky. And then all of a sudden, like at about 2 minutes in, it completely changes to this atmospheric keyboard piece, again, reminding me of Porcupine Tree. And I'm like, that is the strangest transition from in a song that I've heard. And Armando's like, it's not the same song, that's Embryo. And I'm looking, I'm like, nothing's listed as Embryo. I'm seeing Babylon and it goes right to the next track. So when I did eventually go out and read about them, this is a hidden track, apparently, but it sounds like it segues right in from Babylon to this. And I'm like, it just change, and I'm not big on Babylon, but I love the second part, but I thought I was listening to the same song. So apparently this is a hidden track on the record, but really nice atmospheric keyboard piece that kind of tails off and then leads into the next song. So, you know, my takeaways on what I liked: really dark, really heavy, aggressive. Jeff Martin just killed it for me. I thought he was fantastic. And Pete, what I think is funny is, I know he gets the Jim Morrison, Ian Astbury connection. He's got that kind of deeper voice. And some of his phrasing does kind of sound like Morrison. But when I went out and actually watched the videos after I'd gotten a chance to listen to this record a few times, I'm like, he kind of looks like Gary Moore.
A little bit with longer hair, right?
Yeah. So, because everyone was saying he even looks like Morrison. I'm like, I kind of think he looks more like Gary Moore, but I don't know. I think the guy's fantastic. And
yeah, he's a talent. Yeah.
And even reading about them, they did Lollapalooza in '96. So they were out in the US touring. Now, granted, you're with 10 other bands or whatever, but, you know, as far as I know, I never heard a peep from this band. So, you know, I don't know what the takeaway was from, you know, any time they did get in the US or any play. It obviously didn't connect with the audience, but I thought that was pretty cool that they were actually on the main stage of Lollapalooza. So, you know, they gave them a shot, I guess. Maybe that was their one shot and didn't click. And
it is pretty puzzling because based on my, again, just the one album I listened to that I had for my assignment last week, they sound like a band that has everything that would lead to success here in the States.
Yeah.
And it's pretty weird that just never happened because they've been around for a while now. So yeah, I don't get it either, because he's got stars all over him.
Absolutely. And you know what's funny is that time period, even with grunge and alternative, when I heard Temptation, I'm like, the riff sounds like Stone Temple Pilots with keyboards. I mean, they were in that wheelhouse.
Only better.
Well, you know, but I'm just saying, I'm assuming they had, well, to me, listening to it, I'm like, they should have fit in that slot perfectly for that time period. So I guess in terms of the downside, again, I was really impressed with the band, thought they played very well. It's just kind of that, it's probably the industrial thing that pushed me back a little bit. You know, you get some of those harsh tones that kind of run through the sound effects, the noises. I think their keyboard player, he kind of reminds me of Barbieri, kind of his role in Porcupine Tree, where you're kind of putting the atmospheres in. I think it got a little samey, if that makes sense. After listening to the album all the way through, they use the Middle Eastern motifs a lot. It might be a little overdone. So to me, it got a little samey over the course of the entire album. And the only thing I didn't care for were the two slower tracks, Release, and then Aftermath closes the album. And with a album that's really so upbeat and heavy, it kind of goes out on a whimper. That song, to me, it's the longest song I think on the album, and it really just kind of, for me, it doesn't go anywhere. But that being said, I guess my response, or the question, which the new slogan, that might be a t-shirt someday, buy it, stream it, or forget it. I bought it.
There you go.
So I guess in questioning for you, Armando, so I did have one or two questions. And I think the first one, nothing hard.
Go ahead, it's fine.
So you had said Ian Anderson played on one of their records, and one of the things I was thinking was, and again, this is just, you know, you kind of throw stuff out there. This album came out in '97, and Roots to Branches came out, I think, in '95, and that had that very similar, a lot of the Middle Eastern. So I kind of wondered if that had an influence, and obviously they went the industrial techno, but I wonder if, being a fan of Tall, maybe that album had a little influence on a change in direction for these guys, at least for this album.
Possibly, very possibly. I do know that they are fans of Tall, as far as I know. The story was that they were in a bar, and the three of them were in a bar, and Ian Anderson happened to be in the same bar having a beer. And they ran into one another, and I guess Ian Anderson was a fan of them.
Okay.
And, they asked him, do you want to play on this track? And he says, sure. So they sent it to him, and it turned out to be the title track of their most recent album, which is The Ocean at the End, which came out in 2014.
Okay.
And yeah, it's an 8-minute plus track. The flute starts out the track like it, begins at the beginning. What a bloody stupid phrase, but it's redundant. But no, it starts the track, and it's a very slow-paced track. I guess you'd say mid-tempo, not fast at all. But yeah, no, they I think with the Tea Party, like I was saying to Eric, I mean, the first time I heard them was in '93. And I remember I was sitting on my mom's couch. I had my Led Zeppelin box set that I just got. And, the one from 1990, with the box of the 4 CDs. And
Oh, yeah. Yep.
yeah. So I've got that on my CD, my Walkman kind of thing, right? So, and their first video for The River came on, their first single from the album Splendor Solace. And it starts out with like this snake-like guitar riff that comes in, like weaving in and out. And then the drums kick in. This massive drum sound comes in. And I'm like, what the F is this? Like, and I thought they were American. I thought they were Australian. Because at that point in Canadian pop rock music, there was nothing like it. Nothing like it. And then you hear like the Arabic influences, the Middle Eastern influences. And it was just like, okay, this is good. This is something different. This is something unique. And I was just like, I was hooked. I was like, okay, and yes, he does sound like, Jim Morrison. He has the Jim Morrison look. You know what I mean? Like, you can't escape it. But I mean, talent is talent, no matter what it is, right? I mean, if you've got the talent, eventually on some level, it's going to show. It's going to come through.
He's fantastic. And I think that was the other thing that I was a little disappointed, because I know he's got the goods. There's not a lot of soloing on this record. So there's not a lot of guitar solos or keyboard solos, which, I obviously enjoy that. But
yeah,
obviously,
I mean, there's not a ton on the album that I was given either.
Okay.
But there are some. He's a very good player, but I was more impressed by the riffs. I mean, I was like, holy cow, this guy's come out.
Yeah.
And again, there's the Jimmy Page comparisons all over the place. He's obviously a fan, but there's a lot of good riffing going on these albums.
Yeah,
same here.
yeah, and I just wanted to point out that one of the singles from Transmission is called Release. It starts off side 2 or track 6, and what they did was, for that, because it's basically a ballad, and he's saying in the song, I'm not who you think I'm not. Let me start again. It's like, I'm not meant for you. I'm no good for you. You need to leave me. You need to go, because this is not working out. And I don't want to hurt you anymore. The proceeds from that song, all of the proceeds from that single went to, it started in Toronto. It's called the White Ribbon Campaign. And it's men against violence against women. So again, yeah, all the proceeds went to the campaign. And for me, that song in recent years, we lost my sister in 2002.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, sorry about that.
To violence. So when I hear that song now, it's like
Extra special meaning for you. Yeah.
I cry.
Yeah.
I bawl my eyes out, because I think of my sister Carmela, and And they've done that too, like on Soul Breaking on the Interzone Mantras. The proceeds from Soul Breaking went to charities, I believe in Toronto, etc., for battered youth. So they've done the charity work, and they continue to work with White Ribbon Campaign, because the White Ribbon Campaign is all over the world now. Like it started in Toronto on Bay Street in a small office, and it just, believe it took off. Like it just spread. So yeah, they can, believe me, they can rock, they can blow your ass out of the wall kind of thing in terms of through the wall, in terms of the way that they come across. But to me, they're just a unique band that never got the recognition. And the Transmission album was released on Atlantic. They were signed first to Chrysalis in the US and the UK and Europe. And then they moved to Atlantic for Transmission. And then they got dropped by Atlantic, I believe. They're just another band that I don't think were properly marketed. So,
yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more of their albums. So they have piqued my interest.
well, if I can even, give you a recommendation, like I know Martin said, go for Seven Circles. I would go for, or even The Edges of Twilight. I would do that. I'd go for Transmission. I think would be okay. It's got its industrial moments, but it's not overly. It's not Nine Inch Nails. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not heavy in that respect.
There's a pack of, I think, 6 of them that one of our other viewers had extra, and he contacted me and say, "Hey, I've got 6 Tea Party CDs. You want them?" And I'm like, "Sure." So as soon as I get here, I'll let everybody know, and I'll show them off on a listening room episode. But I'm looking forward to diving into them, because I was going to go out and buy a whole bunch anyway. And he contacted me. He's like, "I got a whole stack of them here. You want them?" I'm like, "Yep, I'll take them."
Well, keep me posted. Whatever you like, I'll give a shot.
I'm pretty sure the one Transmission is in there, along
Okay.
with a bunch of other ones. Because Armando, what do they have? 11, 12, something like that?
Albums?
Yeah.
They have, oh my God, they have, I think
it was like 8, but then there were a couple of EPs maybe mixed in.
okay.
Okay, they have one independent release in Splendor Solace. I think they have 6 albums, 6 full-length albums, and they have 2 EPs. They have a live album. I recommended a live album to Eric called Live from Australia, double disc. And it's because they reformed back in 2011, and they did a tour, and they did a double live album and a DVD. And I'm telling you, if you want good music or like good heavy, buy it. Like it is that good. I've never seen them live. I've wanted to, but I've never been able to see them live. And yeah, they're just, again, pardon my language, they're fucking amazing. I'm sorry.
There you go.
I can't.
Well, maybe in the not too distant future, we'll be able to do a ranking show on them, because I mean, you obviously have the whole catalog. I know Rick Labonte does, Martin does, right? So
the only one I don't have is Alhambra, which is like an EP of. There's one song called Time, which features Roy Harper on vocals, and by the way, Jeff Martin did some work with Roy Harper too on an album he did called The Green Man, which he worked with him for about 2 weeks, and apparently drove Roy Harper nuts because he was a perfectionist. Yeah, I don't have that one, but I have all of them. I have we could do that.
Okay, cool.
If you'll have me back, I mean, let's put it that way. I might piss you off this time. So I mean, I don't know, but
not at all.
But yeah.
Cool. So there you have it, everybody. This week's album homework assignment. We got one stream it, one bought it already. So that both are pretty good. I think I'm hoping we don't get too many forget it's in this particular series, but I'm sure that will happen. We can't all like everything, right? It's just it's the way it goes.
It would be good to have that, though. It would be good to have that.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll happen at some point.
It'll happen.
Yeah.
Just to have like one episode where they both say, you know what, screw it. I'm not
These
doing
both
it.
suck.
Yeah, I can't effing do it. I can't do it. Ain't gonna do it. Nope, not gonna do
Well,
it.
you never know, Armando. If you would have gotten Happy the Man with all vocals, you would have been forget this one, right?
Oh, it hurt, Pete. It just hurt me. I mean, I like literally the impact of that car hitting me in the chair, being thrown like so many feet, and whatever.
It's not as bad as a Happy the Man vocal piece.
Oh
Sorry,
my
Stan.
God. The pain eventually went away with the accident. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just yeah, no, it can't.
Oh, boy.
Ain't gonna do it. Ain't gonna do it. Sorry.
That's all right. Hey, that's like me listening to REM, Everybody
Yeah.
hurts. Yeah, I'm hurting right
Yeah,
now
well,
today, guys.
Yeah, go ahead. Go and hurt. Leave me alone.
There you go.
It would be like me listening to a Venom album. Like, I mean,
There you go.
I'm sorry. I've only heard one song from Venom, Bloodlust, like back in the 80s. And it's just like, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. For me, it's about melody and punch.
They're not for everybody. Hey, Venom are not for everybody. That's,
Exactly.
Well, there you have it, everybody. So thanks for watching this week's episode of Album Homework Assignment. But don't touch that dial, because coming right up is another edition of Forgotten Favorites. And then next week, tune in for another edition of Album Homework Assignment on Sunday. And for Armando, not to be confused with Alberto Venditti and Eric Porter, I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you real soon.